to the pod. Welcome back to the cast, the Future of Web3 podcast, where each week we talk everything to do with AI and blockchain. This week we're going to go back to the blockchain and dive a little bit more into NFTs. NFTs, Alex. That's quite the market, isn't it?
Yeah, apparently 99 or 95% of it's worthless. That's a good market.
That's a great market. Yeah, there's a news article this week that said that. And I don't really take that news article to heart at all, because you can say that pretty much for anything. Like 99% of restaurants out there don't exist anymore and have all failed as well. Like, you can't look at a market like that. In my opinion, it was oversaturated for the artwork piece, but I think NFTs have a lot more than art. Like, no one cares about this selfie of a 20-something-year-old kid. Like, how that market, like that NFT, for those of you who don't remember, like, that was an NFT of a student who posted 900 and some odd selfies of himself from one each day for a while. Posted it, was selling them for $3 a piece, and at one point, that entire value of that collection was trading at over $1 million.
Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense. Like, there's no real value in it, and a lot of art is kind of like that. Really, like, I'm not an art connoisseur myself, but I'm more interested in the useful aspects of NFTs and the contract behind it. So I think that's what we should talk about a little bit more today.
Yeah, so it's true, because like when you look at, say, even look back like .com bubble or something like that, is all the technologies that came out of that all had utility. So so you got to figure, I mean, like when you look at like, what is there any surprise that a picture of a monkey wearing like a rice hat smoking a cigar is like worth, as mind you, it's a very expensive NFT. It's not part of the 95%. I may or may not own it, but but it's no surprise that's not worth anything, right? It's just like an AI computer generated picture. But when you go back to like .com bubble, you have all these like Amazon, like easy example, right? That came out of that era, just had utility. So it's the same thing with NFT. Look for the utility.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these projects that are going to be failing, look at their contracts, see what was in the contract that is useful, like as part of the remittance or the verification piece of that NFT part of the contract, or layering any smart contracts onto the NFT itself. Use that technology on those failed projects to grow an existing project. Just like your example of the .com bubble. Company goes bankrupt or company gets bought up by another company, you're just taking a little part of that IP that you care about and building something better from.
Yeah, and I guess that on it, like one side of that is because of the way, like the decentralized nature of Web3 and blockchain and NFTs and all the stuff that's out there right now. It's hard to it's hard to own the underlying IP unless somebody structured it that way. You know, put it in some kind of entity where they can sell it. Because most of it isn't. It's mostly, you know, it's owned by the community essentially. So it's, you know, whoever owns the source code file basically owns the project type thing. But, you know, somehow gets copied and pasted somewhere else. Don't own it anymore. So, but what that really relates to is if you're trying to buy some of the underlying tech from something like an NFT, or, you know, there's ones with like carbon capture for measuring carbon capture or helping to document carbon capture. So unless you so just using that as an example, unless you've taken the source code and documented and patented it and protected it, you know, how could somebody like say like Shell or someone come in and buy that or use that tech?
And I want to clarify on that. Like, we're not saying the NFT aspect of it, so the non-fungible portion of it, like, isn't void or anything like that. Like, the NFT itself still represents something physical or the characteristic of it. We're talking about the code itself. That, like, you can look at the contract, see how they wrote the code. Like, oh, we'll take that code and it might represent something else. So instead of it representing like a picture of a monkey, it can represent a car or something like that in the physical world. Well, that NFT still represents something unique and unique to that NFT itself. The contract behind it is not unique. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. And like what I guess what I was getting to is like, how do you make it like it's like bridging the Web 2 to Web 3 gap that we always talk about. How do you make that relevant in Web 2 world? Because if you own, like in theory, say you have an NFT written up, done up against a Mustang. We used that example in the past. Only Ford should really be able to issue that, right? Like it shouldn't just be say a car collector club or something issuing the NFTs, because, well, how do you determine who has the right to create something like that off of the, something like a car? So there's a lot of, maybe it's going down a rabbit hole we don't need to go down, but it's like, how do you actually, and that's how do you set this up in a way that's actually enforceable in like a Web 2 or in our Web 2 related world type thing?
Well, and I think we can go down that rabbit hole a little bit. And so one idea for me, so how can you use NFTs in a web tool or a physical world is use it as a certificate of authenticity. So let's say you buy a luxury item, like a luxury Hermes purse or like a luxury watch, like a Rolex or something like that. You have that, and each time you buy it, you issue an NFT, a certificate of authenticity. That is an agreed upon certificate. So when you go and you buy it on the secondary market, you run a lower risk of buying a fraudulent version of that or like a counterfeit version of that luxury product, because and you can check on Rolex's website or Rolex's blockchain. You can check and see hey, is this NFT that's associated with this watch the same as the one in this blockchain over here? Yes, it matches. Okay, perfect. This is a legitimate Rolex. This is like a high-end fake or something like that.
Yeah. And then from there, because the question is always going to be, it's like, why would you even is that because there's always challenges around how do you link still with like a Rolex or something. How would you link somebody trying to swap out like a fake one to the real one and then pairing it with the NFT and stuff like that? But I think it's what is always stuck in my mind with that stuff is imagine we use it as that's like a simple example, right, with the Rolex. But what if you had to get a little more complex with what if the piece of data that's being stored is something very multivariate? Say there's 2,000 pieces of data on that. Actually, take the Rolex. So within that Rolex, say every that normally in Swiss watch, any luxury product with Swiss watches normally have all the parts inside are not barcoded. Well, they're coded. They're serial. So within that NFT, then say you could break down and say the watch has 2,500 parts to it, and each part is documented in there one by one. But nobody's duplicating that. You can't. It's not happening. So there's a piece of data there, I guess, that where it would work. But you could even take it beyond that, where if you're dealing with say industrial machinery or something like that might have 200,000 parts in it, you're able to track within that NFT all the little pieces that are there. And so that has a lot of value in terms of things like maintenance, right? You can tell how often was the oil changed or was this hydraulic fluid done or whatever. And you actually have that documented cycle of maintenance or whatever's being done with it. But really what I'm getting to again with the whole thing is now take that and you put it into a database that you don't have to maintain. You don't have a server, you don't have SQL, you're not doing any of that. That's often on a Solarium or on whatever token or whatever platform that's administering it. It's all taken off of your lap, so you don't have to worry about any of that, and it's just this database off in the cloud, so to speak, that you can access, check them, and get all the information you need.
And you read my mind. Why would you care? Okay, great. Well, I keep service records myself. Well, why do I care about having it on a blockchain? It's so you don't have to administer that database, and you don't have to maintain that database. And when you are buying something, you can use the database before you even go and buy a product. You can see all those records and make an informed decision. That is the number one thing. You always want to make an informed decision and make sure that you're buying what is being sold to you. And that's the whole idea behind smart contracts. That's the whole idea behind NFTs, that you're not getting something that is fraud or is a fake of something. You want to just facilitate trust as easy as possible.
Yeah, and it's so helpful too. If you're when you're selling something, I'm in the process of buying a piece of machinery right now, and there's no way of knowing what the quality or what the the maintenance history is on. There's absolutely no idea. It looks good in the picture type thing, but you have no idea. But so if you're able to, as part of that sale process, someone, oh, how's the maintenance has been done on this? Have you changed this part and that part? So just go check. Here's the ownership, or here's the NFT, or here's the address to it. Just, you look at whatever you want.
Yeah, I really do think it's going to be a new market in the next 3 to 5 years, and it is going to grow a lot outside of the art piece that it's in right now.
Yeah, and I think even the idea of like maybe it may not even be the NFT tech like itself sort of thing, where going back to that carbon capture one, because like that's like any oil and gas company, that's like top of their priorities is how do I reduce my CO2? Now, not and literally by producing less CO2, how do I offset it so how do I use less anyway? But like for a company like that, picking up a one of these Web3 enabled projects that is helping to produce carbon credit or carbon offsets, whatever they are, because there's a bunch of platforms out there right now that are doing that. So you could come in and either purchase, well, if you bought the underlying technology for something like that, you don't even have to keep it on blockchain or whatever. You buy the underlying tech that they've built and just built around the Web3.
Well, and like I think, well, you still keep it on blockchain, but it'll be your private blockchain. It doesn't have to be an external blockchain. It can be anything you really want. And like the most important part of like having the NFT is more important than the NFT itself is tying the smart contract to it. Mm-hmm. It's layering on top of the NFT itself. The NFT portion just allows your stakeholders to verify that you are doing what you say you're doing, and again, limiting fraud. So the tree, like the carbon capture example, like think of it, you're buying a plot of trees, like that could be one example of carbon offset. Oh, like 1 acre lot of trees represents this much carbon capture. You can see where that is. And I know that's such a tiny data point right now on a spreadsheet, but now that is an NFT in a smart contract, and you can see, and all your shareholders or any other regulatory group can see that. And it's not maintained by you. You don't have to worry about one of your employees messing something up. You don't have to worry about an organization not having access to something or trying to find codes from 30 years ago. Like, well, where is this? No, it's all right there, all access to everyone to see.
Yeah, and it's like it's probably not for this podcast because it does go beyond, but like or outside of the scope a little bit. But even it goes back to that discussion about the .com bubble and the project and the companies that came out of that had utility. Even in the kind of going back to some of these examples we're given, like you could, in theory, especially if the project is what they're developing is really good. Like for example, there's a project we looked at recently, and it's just for tracking. It's like an auditing process in companies. Like it can check when when somebody opens a document or whatever, it just records it. Or if somebody, buys something on a company card, it records that. And then, but really it's just getting all these activities together, and it's keeping an eye on what's happening in the company, what employees are doing and things like that. So somewhat of a tracking thing like what we talked about before. But really what the goal is to bring all these, otherwise, how would you be able to relate, an expense going through with like some documentation being produced or something? How would you be able to link it together? And like that's what they're using blockchain for. But in theory, like if for a company that's say you want to maintain all that data yourself, you could buy a company that's doing something like that, carve out the Web3 piece if you're not ready for it, and you could just take that underlying IP and apply it. So you still that company, even though it was built, it was accelerated in the Web3 in a Web3 environment. It produced something of utility that could be reapplied later, right?
So what you're saying is go 95% of the value is all wiped out. Just go and buy up an entire NFT collection. Like, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, like it's if you look at it and say, well, it's not worth anything, you just throw it off. It's like, you might be right. 95% of the time, you're probably right. But there's that 5% where there's something where they have there's utility. And they just got wiped out with everybody else because everyone's just focused on what can I trade this for, or what's the floor, of this NFT sitting at, and like not necessarily looking at what's behind that, which could be a pretty good product. So it could be an opportunity to come in and do something like that, where you scoop it up, buy it up, or buy the IP from someone. Especially if someone's sitting on a project that's maybe it's only worth like $100,000 or something, but you look at the technology behind it and say, oh man, if I had to hire somebody to build that, that'd be $1 million. That's not bad.
Not at all.
So there's a bunch of them like that. There's all kinds of stuff. The trick though, it's the due diligence when you're going after stuff like that. How do you actually know it works? A lot of smoke. There's still smoke and mirrors in this because again, it's early. Think .com bubble. Think all that. There's still a lot of you have to be very attentive. We'll put it that way.
So who would you find, or who would you reach out to try to audit these processes?
I would, well, if you have, assuming you have the capability, let's just say you have access to the technical capability, like someone who like software development type people and people understand that space. And then I guess you go right to the project. You go through, like, the way all these guys work is you use like Telegram and Discords and stuff like that, right? It's very, it's convenient. It looks unprofessional, but like when you think from a business sense, but it's super convenient because you can get access to all these different people. It's like LinkedIn pretty much, except without all the restrictions and stuff like that. When you want to talk to someone who owns a project, you just jump in and ask around, hey, who's in charge here? And then you could just start messaging with them and start talking to them. And then just get in front of them and explain what you want to do. I bet if you offer them some decent offer for their IP or for all the underlying code, then they might sell it to you. Simple purchase and sale agreement. There you go.
You hit the nail on the head with that one, because it is always so shocking on how open people are to jump on a phone call. Or start chatting with you. Like, everyone loves talking about their projects, and everyone is hurting for cash right now. Not everyone, but a lot of people are hurting for cash right now. So if you just dive in there, ask around a little bit, like, the community is smaller. It's a large community, but it's a lot smaller than you think. And a lot of people know each other in that community, and they are open to it, and they're open to selling the tech.
I think another powerful thing in that sector is if you come in with your name, you're not hiding behind, Cigar Monkey 123 type thing. And you come in and you're like, this is who I am. I'm not hiding. And like, I'm serious. I want to talk to you about doing, buying this software or whatever you're trying to do. If you come in like and verify yourself, that's powerful, because normally all these guys are used to, everyone's anonymous, kind of it's scared to put their name out there for, I wonder why, but everyone's scared to put their name out there. But if you can come in like, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, that's pretty powerful.
Yeah. So do you see any other like useful aspects of NFTs right now, like that you could see in the next like 1 to 2 years?
I think the challenge, I think there's a lot for sure. I think it's like any application you can think of right now that's backed by like database or some type of own, and I take that back. Anything that's owned by that, it gives you a certificate of ownership, is a great candidate for it, like any of it really. But it's the it's the utility conversation of, is it worthwhile to implement a system like that, or to switch over to a digital system like an NFT versus, plain old brick and mortar, got my server hooked up in the back, it doesn't make sense to make that switch. So that's kind of where the challenge is. I think the application is everywhere, and it's once that makes sense, there's sense to do it, you'll see it everywhere and you'll see it quick.
Yeah. And if you are interested as well, like, feel free to reach out to us, like reach out in the comments, go to our website, anything like that. We'd be happy to jump on the call as well. Like, we're part of that community, and we're also part of the brick and mortar community. Like, we're on the phone all the time. Like, that's what we do for a living. We talk to people, meet with people, and hear about their projects and see how we can make the connections and everything. But you don't have to be afraid, really, to jump into Web3. Like, don't start giving out money right away and everything. Do your due diligence. Like, that's the number one thing. But the technology is here, and it's actually useful.
Yeah, and I'd say just start with like the basics. Like, what is what's keeping you up at night? What's bothering you? Yeah. And think about that. What are the challenges I need to deal with? Whether you're a business owner or you're a stakeholder and you're trying to deal with something, what's actually bothering me? and you don't even have to think that hard about how would Web3 help me, because that's what we're gonna do for you. We'll do the thinking. So bring the challenge to us. We'd be very interested in seeing it for sure.
But I think we should end there this week. Join us again next week for the Future Web3 podcast. Everything to do with Web3, blockchain, and AI. This week we have back to blockchain a little bit. And if you did want to hear a specific topic, please drop it in the comments, and we'd be happy to take a look.